Public Affairs very much thanks Residco, our sole corporate underwriter, for helping to make the production of this show possible.
There's this message throughout our state and in Chicago that there's less consequences if crimes are committed, and that in and of itself will cause crime to rise. It's really not that complicated. There's been 9 public officials indicted by the feds since Governor Pritzker took office.
By the feds, and how many were indicted by Kwame Raoul?
0.
Do you think it has something to do, because not Kwame's a nice guy, he's been on the show before, but is he acting as the people's attorney general, or is he acting as Governor Pritzker's attorney general?
Well, look at his top 3 campaign contributors, and I think you can answer that question for yourself. His #1 campaign contributor is Governor Pritzker.
Is that a conflict of interest?
I think so. I mean,
shouldn't Kwame say, I can't take that?
He just got $1 million on September 23rd from Governor Pritzker's campaign while he's Governor Pritzker's lawyer in a variety of these lawsuits.
So what could you do as an attorney general with respect to public corruption?
If there is a public official who engages in illegal behavior, the attorney general can bring a cause of action against them on behalf of the people. Official misconduct is a big one, you know.
So the important thing is when people start saying, okay, this guy DeVore, he's running for attorney general, he's going to take away a woman's right to choose.
Never.
You say what?
I'm going to defend their right to choose, because that is the right that is established in Illinois by the people of the state of Illinois. That's the law, and I have to defend the law, and that's what I would do. Okay. If Kim Foxx doesn't want to prosecute a criminal for a charge that they've been accused of committing, the Attorney General has concurrent jurisdiction under the law to come in and to participate in that case and to prosecute that criminal on behalf of the people of the state of Illinois.
Welcome to Public Affairs. Our featured guest today, Tom DeVore, who's running for Attorney General of the state of Illinois. Tom DeVore, thank you so much for coming. You are the man of the hour. There's so much going on. You've got 5 weeks until the November 8 election, but more importantly, crime is just going haywire. Street crime. And people are probably wondering, why is he starting with that? He's talking to a guy who wants to be Attorney General. When's the last time we heard the Attorney General of the state of Illinois talk about street crime that's going haywire? I can't remember. Can you?
I can't remember if Kwame Raoul's ever talked about it, because it's not a topic that his words they wouldn't be very popular.
And he would say, I bet, I've had Kwame on the show before he was Attorney General, at least. He said, it doesn't really, the AG doesn't do anything that has to do with street crime. What do you have to say to that, Tom DeVore?
That's not true. If you actually look at the case law in Illinois and go back to some Illinois Supreme Court decisions, the Attorney General's office has concurrent jurisdiction with every state's attorney in the state, and can actually step in and prosecute crimes under that concurrent jurisdiction that was given to them by the Constitution.
So just to pick an example from out there, we're taping the show in Chicago, Illinois. You're running statewide. We'll get to the other parts. But in Chicago, in Cook County, crime is just off the board, okay? I mean, Chicago homicide rate currently 5 times the New York City rate, 2.5 times the Los Angeles homicide rate. Just to give you an idea, it ain't getting any better, okay? Lightfoot says it's getting better. I don't know, 5 times the homicide rate of, what is she talking about? But putting that aside, carjackings went in 2 years, by 2021, it went up like 200%, I think. I mean, and that's just a few thefts, assaults, so forth. What's happening, Tom DeVore? Why did we have such a tremendous increase in crime, street crime, in Chicago, Cook County, many other inner city areas of state of Illinois, 2020, 2021, still going 2022?
Well, I'll give you the answer, and I'll use the answer that was given to me by a young man on a boat tour I did in Chicago a couple of months ago. And I asked him that question because his answer is what I agree with. And he says to me, he says, sir, he says, when people that are inclined to commit crimes begin to realize that the consequences for committing those crimes are getting a lot softer, it emboldens them to not only continue to do it, but to even commit more egregious crimes. So there's this message throughout our state and in Chicago that there's less consequences if crimes are committed. And that in and of itself will cause crime to rise. It's really not that complicated.
So I know you're not in Chicago all the time, but from what you see and hear, Is the state's attorney, the chief prosecutor in Cook County, Kim Foxx, is she prosecuting crime?
She's not prosecuting
Violent crime.
Yeah.
But we talk about the other stuff right now. Is she prosecuting violent crime, rapes, homicides, murder, whatever, robberies, carjackings? Is she prosecuting those violent crimes?
Not to the extent that's necessary in order to deter others from committing those crimes, no.
Kim Foxx just not doing the job?
No, she's not.
How come?
I think that's her political affiliation. I think she's aligned herself with people that don't want to prosecute crimes because that chaos is a benefit to them politically, and so she's falling in line with what they want.
What do you mean? Who is it benefiting that she doesn't prosecute crimes? Who has she aligned herself with who benefit from her failure to prosecute crimes?
I believe that a lot of her money comes from the Soros group, and I think the commission, not the commissioner, but the board chairman, is it Periwinkle?
Cook County Board Chairman, Cook County Board Chair, Tony Preckwinkle. Last
yes.
12 years she's been there, and she is running for re-election. She is 75 years old. She's running against Bob Fioretti, the now former Democrat, now Republican. He's taking her on. But yes, Tony Preckwinkle,
yes.
Some say put Kim Foxx there. Kim Foxx used to be her chief of staff. People said she was a low-level attorney in juvenile division. A number of people say, we've never asked her, has she ever tried a case, let alone
not
a criminal
to my
case?
knowledge. No, not to my knowledge.
So you got Preckwinkle putting Foxx there. Preckwinkle buys into this philosophy that you've just talked about,
yes.
that, criminals are not criminals, they're victims, right?
Right.
They don't want to treat criminals as criminals, treat them as victims. That's the social justice warrior side. And you got Chief Judge in Cook County, Tim Evans. You may have heard of Tim.
Yes, I have.
Tim, he just says, look, we should get these people out of jail. Everybody's presumed innocent. Why should they lose their freedom? Get them out of jail. And we've heard recently from a variety of people who've talked about this. We've heard from Sean Morrison, Cook County Commissioner, and he has said that's what they wanted to do, and they've cleaned out. He would give the data, watch that. So they're getting them out of jail. They bond out. Even before the Safety Act, you no longer have cash bond. You just go, because Evans wants that. There's 700 or 800 judges who are under his supervision or control or influence.
Correct.
So we have Kim Foxx won't prosecute, and if somebody makes an arrest while they're waiting, Tim Evans says get them out. And then they go out and commit another crime while they're waiting for their trial.
Correct.
What can you do about that, Mr. Tom DeVore?
Well, as far as them getting out of jail pre-trial, that's a separate conversation versus what can the Attorney General do.
Yes. Okay.
If Kim Foxx doesn't want to prosecute a criminal for a charge that they've been accused of committing, the Attorney General has concurrent jurisdiction under the law to come in and to participate in that case and to prosecute that criminal on behalf of the people of the state of Illinois. Kim Foxx can try to object as the state's attorney, and then if she objects, then the court's going to have a decision to make. But anybody that would suggest that the Attorney General does not have any jurisdiction to prosecute criminals, they've not read the case law in Illinois, because the case law in Illinois is crystal clear with this concurrent jurisdiction that's given by the Constitution, that the Attorney General can prosecute these criminals, and they actually need to start doing it more, because Kim Foxx then will be put in a position to where she's going to have to start doing her job.
So we're taping this on October 4th. There are 5 weeks until November 8th, the election. That will be decided. You're running for Attorney General. Are you making this an issue? Are you telling people around the state if there are other so-called social justice warriors who aren't prosecuting violent crimes, you'll step in?
That's exactly.
You will go file, and then you'll see what happens if they object. That hasn't been decided, right?
That's not been decided. Yes, if you look at the case law and the history, the Attorney General can step in and pursue those charges on behalf of the people. There is a process for which the state's attorney can try to intervene and object to that. But if they do that, the case law is still uncertain of whether they could intervene in that case and then just dismiss it and make it walk away. That's what I want to push. So as the Attorney General, I'm committing statewide that if we have serious violent offenses that a state's attorney is deciding not to prosecute because of their social policies, that my office and my administration will intervene and we will pick up those charges and we'll proceed.
So this stuff matters because some will know the Illinois Supreme Court has two races in the 2nd District of the Illinois Supreme Court and the 3rd District that are open, and it's hotly contested by Democrats and Republicans. And if the Republicans were to win both of those seats, and they would have a majority in the Illinois Supreme Court for the first time in the last 58 years.
Since 1964.
Sort of modern times, okay. So it matters, and that Supreme Court might be, they probably would be the entity to decide the issue that you talked about that hasn't been decided. What happens when you step in and want to prosecute, when the state's attorney comes in and says, I'm objecting, then you're going to argue that in court. It's going to be decided one way or another. It's going to go up on appeal eventually to the Illinois Supreme Court.
And it will. And I think when you say, when we're talking about, let's be specific, when the state's attorney might intervene and say, I object, what is the end of, where are they trying to go with that? Are they objecting because they want to pursue those charges as the state's attorney, or are they wanting to object merely so they can just dismiss the case and let it go away? I think the court would be very sensitive to that fact pattern.
So you would be litigating that? Would that be an issue you would be raising? Could you raise it at that so-called trial court level?
Absolutely. Because when we will come in and we will assume and prosecute criminals that they choose not to. And then the question is whether the state's attorney, whether they're just going to sit idle and allow us to do it, or whether they're going to try to intervene and to stop us.
You're going to turn around, I don't know, are you going to ask as a witness Kim Foxx, the state's attorney, that question?
I'd love to ask her that question.
So you know how to do this because you've been practicing law for 12 years.
Correct.
You've had, what do we have, something like 30 trials.
Yeah.
All bench trials.
Correct.
But still, you're comfortable putting on a witness for direct. You're comfortable doing cross. You're comfortable doing opening, closing. And if there were a jury, you'd handle that in a heartbeat?
Well, that's the thing as the Attorney General that we have to make sure that we're clear. For example, Miss Madigan was our prior Attorney General. She had even less experience as far as time in the office as me. She was like a lawyer for 7 years before she became Attorney General. So the Attorney General has 400 plus lawyers that work for them. So making the policy decisions about how the administration is going to proceed is the most important part. So when the Attorney General's office is going to go in and actually, pursue cases, that will be those lawyers, men and women that work for the Attorney General. Kwame Raoul does not go in and actually try cases as the Attorney General. He directs his staff of people to do that, and that's perfectly appropriate.
But he could, from time to time, want to set an example and maybe to inspire his staff. In the very same way, the state's attorney of Cook County has about 800 attorneys. So Fox can say, I don't have to try him, I got somebody there. But prior state's attorneys who were trial lawyers from time to time would remind people in their office they know how to do it too.
Yes.
And if you had to in the AG's office, you wouldn't hesitate at all?
I don't hesitate at all. Trying a case, putting on direct examination, cross-examination, pressing witnesses, I don't have a problem with any of that.
So that's very much when people want to know you. They want to know who you are at the core. We've said you've been practicing law for 12 years. You've been in Illinois all your life, right? You live in Bond County near Metro East. Where is that? Tell people who are up here in upstate, where is Metro East?
It's the St. Louis area. It's the Illinois side of the city of St. Louis.
Okay. So back a few years ago, I guess 2 years ago, when Darren Bailey, now running for governor, had a problem with the governor, had an issue. You had an issue too, right?
Yes.
So what was your issue?
Well, when that first came about and Governor Pritzker started issuing this executive orders, which I believe were in excess of his authority as the executive, I made it clear to people in my part of the world that I was looking for a client that might be interested in taking that dispute on. And so Mr. Bailey ended up finding his way to me after a mutual colleague of ours knew that I was looking for a client.
It was kind of a marriage made in heaven, right?
It was a marriage made somewhere, yes.
Somewhere.
But yeah.
You were happy to find each other. He wanted a lawyer who would not be reluctant to go after the governor, not just for going after the governor, But if he was right that the governor was exceeding his powers, that's basically what you argued in court. Is that right?
That's exactly what we argued in court. And the thing is about the legal profession is there's a lot of competent lawyers. But it's just being a competent lawyer is not enough. You have to have the courage and the fortitude to say this issue needs to be addressed and actually take it to the public in the courtroom. That's a quality that we don't have enough of, and we need more of that. So making those arguments when, half the population may not like that argument,
right,
but you're making it because it's the right thing to do.
That's what guides you. And because you're running as a Republican for Attorney General, but when you're elected, if you're elected Attorney General, are you a Republican Attorney General, a Democratic Party Attorney General, or are you just the Attorney General for the people of the state of Illinois?
I'm just the Attorney General, and a prime example we can use of that, as I get asked a lot, is about the issue of abortion in Illinois. Illinois has a law, and that law creates fundamental right for a woman to choose to have an abortion. That's the law that I will protect as the Attorney General because the people passed that law. Democrat or Republican means nothing to me in the office of Attorney General. It's about protecting the rights of all people.
So you have personal views about abortion, but then you have your obligations as a professional, as the Attorney General, in enforcing the law. Right?
Absolutely.
And the law in Illinois about abortion says what?
It says that a woman has a fundamental right to choose if she wants to have an abortion up until a certain point of time, typically viability, which is determined by a medical professional. That's the law in Illinois.
Which is roughly 5.5, 6 months, something like that.
Something of that.
The scientists, the doctors, that's the science opinion. That's not just a lawyer's opinion.
It's not a lawyer's opinion.
But the viability thing has been adopted by the Supreme Court going back to Roe. I think it has in Roe v. Wade, right?
It was in Roe, but again, when Roe v. Wade...
It's been refined over the years. Okay.
When Roe v. Wade got, overturned, really just sending those back to the states to make those decisions, our state has made that decision. It made it crystal clear, and it is what it is, and I respect it.
But the important thing is when people start saying, okay, this guy DeVore, he's running for Attorney General, he's going to take away a woman's right to choose.
Never.
You say what?
I'm going to defend their right to choose because that is the right that is established in Illinois by the people of the state of Illinois. That's the law, and I have to defend the law, and that's what I would do.
Okay. Just like comparable, you may have heard this about these Supreme Court races. We've got this guy who's been on the show before, Justice Michael Burke. He's running in the 3rd District.
Yes.
He's running against Mary Kay O'Brien. Mm-hmm. If you're following the ads are saying...
I follow some of them.
The ads are saying that Burke said he would like to overthrow Roe v. Wade. Burke said. Well, they cite to my show, so I could say something about it because it's on tape. He didn't say that. Look at the tape. I mean, tell me, if a Supreme Court justice candidate has an ad that she's running where she says, I'm so-and-so, and I support this ad, has she violated the canons of ethics if it's untrue, her ad?
In my opinion, yes.
Because you may know, do you know Justice Michael Burke?
I've met him one time.
Maybe you missed the show. He said his personal view, he's a devout Catholic, his personal view would be pro-life. But he made very clear on that show, he doesn't impose his views on counsel, on parties, or anybody. He does what you said. He looks at the law, he looks at the facts, and then he decides. He doesn't decide this now because that would be wrong. He doesn't decide it until the case is presented to him.
That's right.
Same thing with Mark Curran. What's going on here, folks? Where are the media? I'm not taking sides. I'm not taking sides for a Democrat or a Republican. But shouldn't the media call out things? If they see a lie, shouldn't they do that? They fact-check Trump. Shouldn't they fact-check these Supreme Court justices? When you sued the governor,
yes.
Okay, when you sued him on behalf of Darren Bailey, what was the issue there?
The issue was whether or not under the Illinois Emergency Management Agency Act, the governor could issue a disaster proclamation that had an artificial termination date in it, to where he could issue one for 30 days and issue another one for 30 days and another one for the same disaster, right? Because that was being done for the sole purpose of trying to continue to re-energize the emergency powers that law gives for 30 days. That's what the law says. So a way for the governor to work around that, he's now issued 34 consecutive disaster proclamations for the same exact COVID issue. So
COVID, some people say, perhaps CDC seems to say, is basically over. But Governor Pritzker says it ain't over till I say it's over, so he keeps issuing these emergency power declarations that give him the power because the disaster that was COVID is not over. Is that right? Is that what the governor's saying?
That's what he's trying to do. And the reason that
Is he getting away with it?
He's getting away with it because people don't object. But you know, one of the main reasons...
Well, wait a second. When you objected on
Yes.
behalf of your client, what was the ruling?
Well, initially the ruling is that the governor can't do that.
Right.
But there's been a court, the Foxfire case that happened up here in the north. We had an appellate court say that the governor could reissue these every 30 days. Now, that's a separate question of what is the extent of his power. It's just saying that he can re-energize this every 30 days. It was a horrible decision. I think the Illinois Supreme Court needs to address it. And if I'm Attorney General, I will bring that case back in front and it will go to the Supreme Court of whether or not you can play this fiction to continue trying to wield emergency power forever if you wanted to.
So again, these elections in the Illinois Supreme Court in the 2nd and 3rd District matters because people want them decided fairly. They want them decided not on the basis of whether the party or the council is a Republican or Democrat. They want them decided on what's fair and what's just, which means those justices shouldn't decide things before they're presented, right?
Correct.
All right. So think about that, folks, as you vote. And so we've covered quite a bit. I think people right now, they don't seem to have any idea, do they, that most of these key issues, they are the issues that people should be thinking about when they vote for Attorney General, right?
Correct.
Right? And there are a few others because the issue of corruption is rife, right? I mean, we've heard about Speaker Madigan being indicted. We've heard about many other Democrats, maybe a few Republicans being indicted. We've had governors galore being sent to prison. So what do you have to say as Attorney General about the issue of public corruption? Is that an issue under your purview as Attorney General if you were elected?
Absolutely. It is an issue.
But it hasn't been. I can't think of the last time an Attorney General has accused anybody of public corruption, at least not a big name that we're talking about, right?
No.
Notwithstanding all of these folks who are currently indicted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. So what happens? Is it just the U.S. Attorney that has the power and not the Attorney General?
There's been 9 public officials indicted by the feds since Governor Pritzker took office.
By the feds. And
Yeah.
how many were indicted by Kwame Raoul?
0.
Do you think it has something to do, because Kwame's a nice guy, he's been on the show before, but is he acting as the people's Attorney General, or is he acting as Governor Pritzker's Attorney General?
Well, look at his top 3 campaign contributors, and I think you can answer that question for yourself. His number 1 campaign contributor is Governor Pritzker.
Is that a conflict of interest?
I think so. I mean,
Shouldn't Kwame say, I can't take that?
he just got $1 million on September 23rd from Governor Pritzker's campaign while he's Governor Pritzker's lawyer in a variety of these lawsuits.
So what could you do as an Attorney General with respect to public corruption?
If there is a public official who engages in illegal behavior, the Attorney General can bring a cause of action against them on behalf of the people. Official misconduct is a big one, you know.
So assuming, which is he hasn't been in trial yet, everybody's presumed innocent, but there's a strong case apparently in the U.S. Attorney's mind against Speaker Madigan because they filed suit, right?
Right.
And if you looked at that and you thought that also you agreed that it made sense, you could have filed that lawsuit against Speaker Madigan. Is that what you're telling me?
Correct.
And against the others at ComEd, and then on and on and on. You could have done all of that, right?
Yeah, well, here's one that, again, we talk about the big cases like Mr. Madigan, et cetera, but look at Mr. Jones, who just recently is now under investigation by the feds because he was trying to take a $5,000 payment, let's call it, to influence the red light camera legislation. Think about that. And he did it, and he's not being investigated or prosecuted by Kwame Raoul. And what it does is it emboldens them.
Go ahead, sorry.
It emboldens other public officials at all levels, not just state, but at the county and the city, to do things and exceed their authority because there's no consequences.
Who is Mr. Jones?
He's from up here in the north someplace. He's in the general, what's his name? It's not Emil Jones?
Emil Jr. Emil Jones was his father.
Yeah, there's a junior, yes, it's him.
So the dad was the Senate president of the state of Illinois.
Gotcha.
Big guy.
Yeah, it's Jones Jr., yes.
So Jones Jr. is a pretty powerful guy because of his dad. So maybe Kwame Raoul would be reluctant to indict him for that reason?
Well, you know who the second biggest contributor is to Kwame Raoul's campaign?
No.
The Illinois Democratic Party.
So that's another reason why he shouldn't take those. Look, folks, we're fair. Kwame, Mr. Raoul, Attorney General, General Raoul, come on and defend yourself, okay? We'll give you every opportunity, the same opportunity that Tom DeVore, Attorney General, candidate, had to make these accusations. They're accusations now.
Absolutely.
Okay? Accusations of a conflict of interest.
Correct.
Kwame, come on down.
So the state of Illinois, the appellate prosecutor is representing the state. Kwame says, well, since I represent the state of Illinois against Jenny in the federal case, I can't bring charges against her for work comp fraud because people might think that that's some kind of, we're attacking her or something. That's not an ethical conflict under the laws of our state. You can be adverse to somebody as many times as you want to be adverse to them, as long as you're not on one side of one case and the other of another case. You will not find a lawyer in Illinois that says Kwame has a conflict against Jenny Thornley and can't bring this case against her. It doesn't exist. He has a political conflict, but he can't talk about it, okay? He can't say that.
What's his political conflict?
Because it implicates the governor's office at the highest level. If Kwame Raoul went to court and said, Judge, I need you to appoint the appellate prosecutor to bring charges against Jenny Thornley because I have a conflict because I'm already adverse to her in the federal case, the judge would deny that and say, I'm not going to appoint the appellate prosecutor because you don't have a conflict, Mr. Raoul. That's why he's not filed the motion.
So if the governor, who's a lawyer on which Northwestern has named their law school, the Pritzker School of Law, so the governor probably understands this.
Of course he does.
Do you think he's got any responsibility to say to Mr. Raoul, there's really no conflict here?
Yeah.
Does he have that? Would you say as a governor he's got that responsibility, maybe even ethical as a lawyer, even if he's not practicing now?
They do have an ethical responsibility.
They do.
But the way they're doing this is they're just trying to ignore it and hope that nobody will talk about it anymore. That's what they're trying to do.
So they've got 5 weeks.
Yes.
Because if they can get by the next 5 weeks, the governor's race is over. They're through that. The AG race, they hope, is over. And the media, they can just say, oop, nobody raises it. I don't know why. Why? The media just reluctant? They don't want to get on the wrong side of the governor?
Well, you saw what happened with this media agency up here that was printing out some articles for someone that the governor didn't like. He used his political pressure and he got them to stop printing those articles.
They just backed down. The paper just backed down.
Yeah, the paper backed down.
That's what we call really strong journalism. I won't identify the paper.
No, we don't want to do that. But of course, I mean, the governor with his influence, financial influence and political influence, these media organizations are not going to do anything that might offend him. They're just not going to do it. I mean, how does Jenny Thornley collect workman's comp benefits for an injury, whether she had it or had it? It was proved she didn't.
Anything about Jenny Thornley being a friend of somebody of high influence?
Well, Jenny Thornley is a former campaign staffer for Governor Pritzker.
Bit of a conflict there.
Bit of a conflict. So she works for the State Police Merit Board, has worked for the State Police Merit Board since 2013 until she was fired. And she fills out an application for work comp benefits, and it says right in the document, I work for J.B. Pritzker. Here's his personal cell phone number. That's fraud.
Okay.
Whether the governor committed fraud or not, I'm not here to say. Right. I'm saying that his name is a part of that fraudulent application, and nothing's happening.
All right. Tom DeVore, candidate for Attorney General in the state of Illinois. Tom, you come on back if you can before November 8th.
Yes, sir.
Let us know how it's going, if people are paying more attention to these issues. And folks, you out there in the audience, you come back next week and every week to Public Affairs.